Welcome to HFY Chronicles. At the sum of 1,000 subscribers, I'll post a special series just for you. Subscribe now. In the shadowed hours before dawn, when even the stars hold their breath, General Elian Thorne stood at the edge of what was once the Crimson Plains. His weathered face, more scar than skin, reflected the first tentative rays of sunlight. The land before him, once fertile and vibrant, now lay barren and scorched, a testament to over a century of relentless warfare. As he gazed across the desolation, his mind drifted back to a time when the world was whole, before the skies split open and hell itself spilled onto their realm. The many races of our world may not have lived in harmony, but we at least lived mostly in tolerance. Gone were the days of war between elf, dwarf, human, Yisoki and the small folk, as well as the other minor races that dotted our lands. We had achieved an uneasy peace, a delicate balance maintained through treaties and trade rather than bloodshed and conquest. This was a time of unprecedented cultural flowering. Advancements in science, magic, fine arts, and countless other disciplines flourished in the absence of large-scale conflict. The great elven libraries of Sylvandale house scrolls dating back millennia, their magic academies producing spellcasters of remarkable skill. The dwarven forges of Khazad-dûm burned day and night, producing marvels of engineering that blended ancient craftsmanship with innovative design. Human cities sprawled across the plains, their adaptability allowing them to incorporate elements from all cultures into their ever-evolving societies. The Waizoki warrens beneath the eastern hills buzzed with activity, their traders and tinkers traveling far and wide, exchanging goods and information with equal enthusiasm, and the small folk, mysterious and reclusive as always, tended to their hidden groves and practiced their ancient communion with what they simply called the other, forces beyond our understanding that seemed to bend reality to their whims. In the human kingdom of Valorhall, a young soldier named Elian Thorne had just completed his basic training, proud to join the ceremonial guard that had not seen true combat in generations. His commander, Captain Marissa Blackwood, often reminded her charges that their ancestors would have laughed at what passed for military readiness in these peaceful times. "Our swords are sharp but untested," she would say, "and untested steel is just expensive decoration." Little did they know how soon those words would prove prophetic. In the elven realm of Aetheril, Archmagister Lysander Moonshadow supervised the training of young mages with the patient detachment that came from 8 centuries of life. His star pupil Arianwen Dawnlight showed promise that excited even his measured temperament. Her ability to weave complex enchantments surpassed many masters twice her age, though at barely 90 years old she was considered little more than an adolescent by elven standards. Deep within the mountain fortress of Khazad-dûm, Master Smith Thorin Ironheart hammered at his forge, crafting weapons of such quality that they were sought by collectors who would never use them in battle. His daughter Brenna Ironheart worked the bellows, her strong arms pumping steadily as she dreamed of the day she would forge her own masterpieces, rather than assist with her father's. None of them knew that their world stood on the precipice of catastrophe. None could have predicted the shattering. To this day, we do not know what brought it about. It seemed nearly every race was blamed at some point. The elves for their magical experiments, the dwarves for delving too deep, the humans for their reckless expansion, the small folk for communing with forces beyond comprehension. Space itself seemed to twist and break as reality frayed in what all claim was an area of no importance, a nondescript valley called Stillwater Basin, remarkable only for its unremarkability. The first signs were subtle. Animals fleeing the region, strange lights in the night sky, whispers of madness affecting travelers who passed too close. Then came the dreams. Identical nightmares plaguing people of all races, visions of a great eye, opening where no eye should be. And finally, on the longest day of summer, the sky above Stillwater Basin simply tore. The rift appeared with a sound that defied description, not quite thunder, not quite scream, but something that resonated in the bones of all who heard it. Those unfortunate enough to witness the event firsthand described it as watching reality itself being peeled back like skin from fruit, revealing something writhing and wrong beneath. And then things came through. These demons seemed endless, a horde of monsters of all shapes and sizes come to our world to kill and conquer. Some resembled twisted parodies of our own races, while others defied classification entirely, masses of eyes and teeth, creatures of living shadow, beings that seemed to exist partially in dimensions we could not perceive. They poured through the rift like water through a broken dam, and the peaceful world we had known ended in screams and blood. The initial response was chaotic and disorganized. Nearby human settlements were the first to fall, their inhabitants slaughtered, or worse, transformed by the corrupting touch of the invaders. News spread faster than the demons themselves, carried by terrified refugees who brought tales too horrific to be believed, yet too consistent to be dismissed. Within a fortnight, the leaders of all major races convened an emergency council. Ancient rivalries were set aside in the face of extinction. The dwarven king Barad-dûr Stonecrown pledged his people's strength. Queen Elindra of the Elven realms offered the full might of their magical knowledge. Lord Protector Darian Valerian committed the human armies. The Ysoki Warren Masters promised their networks of spies and saboteurs. Even the reclusive smallfolk sent representatives, their normally cheerful faces grave with the weight of what was to come. The alliance formed that day would be tested beyond measure in the years to come. The dwarves stood first. With the resilience of steel and the stubbornness of stone, they held the line. Their heavy infantry formed impenetrable walls of shields and axes at strategic mountain passes, channeling the demonic forces into killing grounds where every inch of advance cost the invaders dearly. Brenner Ironheart, once a smith's apprentice, now led a battalion of dwarven defenders at the Battle of Red Gorge, where they held against overwhelming odds for 17 days without relief. The Ysoki, benefiting from their small stature and large litter sizes, were able to field what seemed to be thousands of spies, scouts, and saboteurs. They infiltrated demon-held territories, gathering intelligence on enemy movements and weaknesses, poisoning water sources used by the invaders, and setting traps that claimed hundreds of demonic lives for every Ysoki lost. Warren Lord Scrix Quickwhisker became legendary for leading 50 successful raids behind enemy lines, disrupting supply chains the demons had established using enslaved captives. The small folk, benefiting from their deep connection with the other, unleashed chaos and illusion upon the enemy ranks. Their magic was unlike the structured spellcraft of the elves, wild, unpredictable, and all the more effective for it. Demons would find themselves lost in endless mazes of illusion, or suddenly unable to distinguish friend from foe, turning their savagery upon each other. Thistlewick Brambleheart, barely 3 feet tall, became known as the Demon's Nightmare for his ability to trap entire battalions in hallucinatory terrors. And then the humans, as usual, had nothing exceptional to add and simply did their best. What they lacked in magical prowess or longevity, they made up for in adaptability and sheer stubborn determination. Captain Marissa Blackwood, once a trainer of ceremonial guards, now commanded the defense of Valahall's eastern front, rotating her troops in short shifts to maintain constant pressure on the enemy. Her former trainee, Elian Thorne, rose quickly through the ranks as his tactical instincts and ability to inspire those around him became apparent. Our people, the Elves, contributed our great working of magic and immense skill that only are possible with our many centuries of training. Archmagister Lysander led the creation of massive warding spells that could incinerate demons by the hundreds, while Arianwen Dawnlight pioneered techniques to close the smaller rifts that had begun appearing throughout the land, preventing the enemy from outflanking our defensive positions. For a time, it seemed the alliance might hold. The initial demonic advance was halted, though at terrible cost, but the enemy was cunning and learned quickly. They began targeting the unique weaknesses of each race, adapting their strategies with an intelligence that belied their monstrous appearance. The first ones to retreat were the small folk. It seemed that their techniques had nearly no impact on the demons after the initial surprise wore off. The invaders developed resistance to illusions and chaos magic with frightening speed, and the small folk died in droves before gracefully withdrawing to their sanctuaries after a year of fighting. Thistlewick Brambleheart was among the last to leave, his once bright eyes now haunted by the sight of his kin, falling before enemies that had grown immune to their greatest strengths. Next, the Ysoki ran away when the miasma was unleashed, in the 10th year of war. A horrible toxic gas flooding their lines, created by the demons specifically to target their respiratory systems. The demons themselves ignoring their foul creation as it killed or weakened any without the benefits of dwarven blood. Warren Lord Scrix led the evacuation of the surviving Ysoki, carrying the youngest kits himself as they fled through hidden tunnels to safety, the sounds of choking and dying comrades echoing behind them. Shamefully, the dwarves took great losses to hold the initial invasion force at bay without our aid. Their fortresses, once thought impregnable, began to fall one by one as the demons employed siege engines of impossible size and power. As such, they retreated to their great mountain holds, leaving word that they would need time to build tools of war and raise a new generation of warriors. They had held the line for 19 years. Surely we could keep the enemy at bay until their army was ready. Brenna Ironheart, now scarred and battle-hardened, supervised the sealing of the great doors of Kazakhstan, tears streaming down her face as she watched the last refugees from the surface world enter before the mountain was closed to all. After 5 years of bearing the brunt of the war alongside the humans, we elves were forced back to take shelter behind our wards. While we live much longer than other races, we have fewer children and they take longer to mature. More elves died in those 5 years than the last 5 millennia. The loss was unbearable. Entire bloodlines that had existed since the dawn of our civilization were extinguished in a single generation. Archmagister Lysander, who had seen nearly a millennium of life, wept openly as he ordered the retreat, knowing what it meant for those left behind. And so we fled, leaving the humans to die. We fled, and the humans fought. After a year, as the demons took more and more of our world, we wept for the dead and the humans fought. Cities fell one by one, but for every settlement lost, the humans made the demons pay in blood. Marissa Blackwood died, holding the bridge at Westford, allowing thousands of civilians to escape. Her final message to the command was simple: "They shall not pass while I draw breath." After 5 years, we denied the humans our magic. They asked for the tools to hold the line, but we knew that anything left in their hands would be one more tool for the demons when the humans inevitably fell. Arianuen argued passionately against this decision, insisting that we owed our allies better, but she was overruled by the Elven High Council. But still the humans fought, developing their own crude but effective countermeasures against demonic magic. After 10 years, we grieved as the humans fought, for they had lost an unimaginable amount of their people, entire regions depopulated, bloodlines ended, cultural treasures destroyed. Elian Thorne, now General Thorne, commanded what remained of the human forces from a series of hidden fortresses, employing guerrilla tactics that kept the demons off balance, despite overwhelming numerical superiority. Yet the humans still fought, with children as young as 12 taking up arms alongside the elderly and infirm. After 20 years, we offered to bring the humans into our wards. Our conscience could no longer bear the weight of their sacrifice. But they refused. General Thorne's response to our emissary was recorded for posterity: "We do not fight to survive. We fight so that others may live. If we retreat now, what happens to those who cannot? What happens to the world itself? No, we will hold the line. We will be the shield that protects you all until you are ready to return." And the humans fought. After 30 years, we prayed for the humans, as it seemed the world itself wept for the scraps of that proud people. Their once great cities were now ruins. Their farmlands were blighted wastelands. Their population had been reduced to perhaps 1/10 of what it had been before the shattering. But those scraps, those scarred and bruised humans, they fought with the desperation of those who know they are the last line of defense for all they hold dear. After 40 years, we cheered as the dwarven holds opened. We watched with hope and confusion as we witnessed marvels of engineering emerged to do battle. Every moment, every scrap of steel, every spark of invention since they retreated had been devoted to this moment. Cannons the size of buildings, strange creatures made of solid metal, hammers that struck with the weight of mountains. They emerged an entire generation of warriors that had been born, trained, armed and armored with the sole purpose of defeating these invaders. Brenna Ironheart, now Master Engineer Ironheart, led the vanguard, her beard white with age but her eyes burning with the same determination that had sustained her people through their long isolation. They stood next to the humans, and they fought. The return of the dwarves marked a turning point in the war. Their war machines could destroy demons that had previously seemed invulnerable. Their armor could withstand attacks that would have vaporized unprotected flesh. For the first time in decades, the Alliance began to reclaim territory, pushing the demons back toward the original rift. The Isuki returned as well, having developed new respiratory systems that rendered them immune to the miasma. Their sabotage operations resumed with renewed vigor, now targeting the larger rifts that had opened throughout the land. Warren Lord Scrix, though elderly now, trained a new generation in the arts of infiltration and asymmetric warfare. Even the small folk emerged from their sanctuaries, having developed new forms of magic that affected the physical world rather than the mind, causing the very earth to rise up against the invaders. Thistlewick's grandchildren led these efforts, their small stature belying the immense power they could bring to bear. After a century had passed, enough elves had grown to where we emerged once more. This time, we were ready. With the help of the small folk, we roused nature itself. We arrived to the battlefields with spells and weapons created to destroy these demons. Alongside the many beasts of the land, and the very trees themselves began to walk. Archmagister Lysander had passed during our seclusion, but Arianwen Dawnlight, now Archmagister herself, led our forces with a ferocity born of a century of guilt and shame. And we fought. It took 112 years, but the demons were cast out and their rifts slammed shut. The final battle at Stillwater Basin, where it had all begun, lasted for 7 days and nights without pause. General Thorne, impossibly old for a human but sustained by sheer will, led the combined forces of all races in a desperate push to the main rift. Master Engineer Ironheart's greatest creation, a device that could seal the tear in reality itself, was carried to the very edge of the rift by a suicide squad of volunteers from every race. The device activated, and with a sound like the world taking its first breath after drowning, the rift closed. The remaining demons, cut off from their home dimension, fought with redoubled fury, but were ultimately overwhelmed by the united forces of our world. Over a century of war for survival itself changed the very land. We stared in horror at once great fields that had been watered with the blood of man. So many of their people were dead. We could fill canyons and build mountains. We could flood rivers with their spilt blood. Of all the races, they had suffered the most, fought the longest, sacrificed the greatest proportion of their population. We sought them out, seeking forgiveness. We needed to help them. We needed to do anything we could to fix this, fix the world, fix them. We needed answers. They live shorter lives than elf or dwarf. They have fewer children than the Ishuki. They don't have the talents for magic like the small folk or elves. They don't have the sturdiness or strength of a dwarf. They don't have the inventions of the dwarves or the spells of the elves. How did they hold the line? How did they bear these losses? How did they know we would win? Why didn't they take shelter behind our wards? Why did they just keep fighting? Archmagister Arianwen herself approached General Thorne after the final battle, kneeling before him in a gesture of respect no elf had shown a human in recorded history. "How?" she asked simply. "How did you endure when all seemed lost? How did you maintain hope when we abandoned you?" The human general, who seemed more scar than skin, laughed at her, but he had the answer. His voice, rough from years of shouting orders over the din of battle, carried a wisdom that transcended his race's supposedly limited lifespan. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about defeating the demons. It wasn't about slamming those rifts shut. We didn't need any of that. Every inch of land they bled us on, every second they spent killing us, every injury they took slaughtering us, that was one more inch they needed to cross, one more second for others to survive, one more weakness to be exploited. All we needed to do was not lose. As long as they didn't win, that was all that mattered. He gestured to the devastated landscape around them, his weathered hand trembling slightly with age and exhaustion. "Look around you. This was never about glory or triumph. It was about buying time. Time for your children to grow, time for the dwarves to build, time for the Iskoti to adapt, time for the small folk to develop new magic. We humans don't have centuries to prepare. We have only the moment before us, and we chose to use those moments to ensure there would be a future, even if we wouldn't live to see it. Now, the races of the world still don't live in harmony, but the world has changed. Gone are the days of elven empires, dwarven clanholds, human nations, and Isoki enclaves. We stood united against the great enemy, and we stand united still. No more fighting for our race to be the best. As the scattered remains of man merged with the surviving nations of the other races, we remember their lesson. Arianwen Dawnlight established the first mixed-race academy of magic, where humans studied alongside elves, their shorter lifespans balanced by their innovative approaches. Brenna Ironheart opened the forges of Kazakh Dum, to apprentices of all races, creating a new tradition of shared craftsmanship. The Isuki Warrens became trading hubs where all were welcome, and the small folk began teaching selected individuals from other races the basics of their communion with the other. For if the great enemy ever returns, we must be ready. Do not seek to triumph over others. The greatness of an individual or race today is worthless when facing the death of the future. So remember and be ready, because it isn't about winning. It's about ensuring there will be a tomorrow, even if we are not there to see it. As dawn fully broke over the scarred landscape, General Elian Thorne turned away from the battlefield. Behind him, representatives of all races worked together to establish a permanent memorial to those who had fallen. Before him lay a world forever changed, wounded, diminished, but unbroken. A world worth fighting for, a world worth dying for, a world that would, against all odds, endure. As the echoes of this tale resonate in your mind, remember that every story needs those who will carry it forward. If this journey through darkness and resilience spoke to you, don't let it end here. Like this video to help others discover this narrative of sacrifice and unity. Comment below with your thoughts. What would you have done in the face of such overwhelming odds? Subscribe to join our community of storytellers and listeners, where tales of courage and hope await. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when new chapters of our shared mythology unfold. Together we keep the flame of these stories burning bright against whatever darkness may come.